finished up our series on Philippians, and we're going to take a couple weeks here and look at the basics of Christianity. And in September, we're going to start a new series looking at being an ambassador of Christ. Something we're going to do in September, just as an announcement, just to kind of let you know what's going on, is we're going to start more home churches, more house churches, more small groups if we can. And what we're hoping for out of that is that we can, with the Sunday morning service that streams right now, and still 2/3 of our people, between half and 2/3, are watching from home. They're not able to come back yet. And so we want to expand that, but give people a chance to watch it, maybe in smaller groups. So if you're watching today and you've got a big garage or a barn or a pool area or someplace where you could put a TV up there and show the service and invite 3 or 4 or 5 couples over, where everybody could spread out. We're hoping we can start doing some of that kind of stuff. But also on Wednesday night, even if you're here today and you say, well, I don't want to do that, I'd rather come on Sunday morning, come here. But even on Wednesday night, we're going to start something on Wednesday night in September, just a series through Galatians, and it'll just be a Bible study that'll be about 30 minutes long, and we'll provide people with some questions if they want to do a home study in their house. It doesn't require a lot. It requires that you can turn on a television and that you can be friendly. How many of you guys can turn on a television? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, a lot of you. Good. We can train the ones who aren't able to and show you how to do that. And so think about it. It's not for everybody. I understand that, but we want to open up as much as we can. I know there are some people, because of their high susceptibility, if they were to get the virus, it would be really dangerous for them, that haven't left the house really except for groceries since March. I mean, they just have stayed away from everybody. And it's very, 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 very hard to do the Christian life when you don't have other people. It was never meant to be a solo religion. It was always meant to be a community. And when you have to do it by yourself, it's grueling, to be honest. It's very hard. So we think this kind of a movement could help people. But to launch us into that, for 2 weeks here, we want to kind of get back into what it is about Christianity, what's required with Christianity, what you're supposed to do, and what I'm supposed to do in terms of just being a Christian. When we bought the house that we live in now, Julia and I took a lot of it down to the studs. We took a lot of the floor up. We took a lot of stuff up that had either gotten warped or rotten or had cracks in it, and we replaced a lot of stuff. And what the next 2 weeks are is if we take faith, back down to the studs. And at some level, COVID has done that for us, has taken church right back down to the very basics, and makes you think about, okay, well, what do we do? And so this week, specifically for each person, what is a person supposed to do as a Christian? But then next week, I want to talk about, in this era when we can't all get together at the same time, how do we be a church in that? So that's what the next 2 weeks are about, getting back to the basics. One verse we're going to focus on over the next couple weeks is this one. No? Hang on, we're thinking about it. Well, it may come on. If it doesn't, that's fine. I won't be mad. Alex, we'll be friends. Okay. This verse, whoever claims to live in him must live as Jesus did. 1 John 2:6, it's a verse I read this week in my devotions, and it kind of stuck with me as a pretty powerful verse. If you want to follow after Jesus, it's not that complicated. Just do what Jesus did. And the key to thinking about that is to do what Jesus did if he was in your situation, with your family, with your friends, with your network of contacts. If he was in your job, with your strengths, with your weaknesses, what would Jesus do? And it's not about being just exactly like Jesus, because when you make that the standard, you're going to feel like you're failing all the time. It's about just trying to walk his direction. If we had a race to Bedford, and I said, we're all going to Bedford, it's, as long as you get to Bedford, you win the prize. You don't have to be first, just get to Bedford. We'll all be heading that direction. Some people probably sprint out of here real fast, and we're able to hold that sprint almost the whole way. Other people are going to walk, and they maybe even with walking take some breaks on the way, but we're all heading the same direction. Some people get distracted on the way, and they dart off on down a Walnut Quarry there maybe, or they get off on Anderson Lane. But again, they'll get there eventually because we're all heading the same way. And so when you make a decision to be Christian, that's what you do. You put Jesus first. When I first became a Christian, they talked about a plan of salvation. It was a 5-finger thing. You need to believe in Jesus and repent and confess and be baptized, and then you'll live the Christian life. And that's what this verse is about. It's about living the Christian life. It's about making sure that whatever else goes on, he's going to be first place. Now, doesn't mean the other stuff's not important. To believe or repent or confess or be baptized, all those things are important. I mean, it's all those things that get you on the path, that get you started, but they're all starting line kind of stuff. Sometimes in Christianity, in Christian church, we make those 4 things or those 5 things the ending point. Like, as long as you're baptized, well, that's all you got to do. You're free to go. And that's not really how Jesus describes it. Interestingly enough, Jesus in the Bible never lists out 5 things you got to do to be saved. He just says, follow me. Just follow me. When he talks to Peter, when he talks to Philip, when he talks to Thomas, that's what he says. Just come after me and I'll take you where you need to go. Now, Bible teaching churches can disagree about how intense this needs to be. There are some Bible teaching churches that will say if you're not working hard all the time, you're falling behind. And that'll be their lesson most weeks. There are other churches that say, no, you don't have to work at all. Once you have prayed a certain prayer or have been baptized, then you're saved. And to do any work at all is kind of dishonoring God. He's going to save you whatever. And I think we're probably somewhere between those extremes. And I think those are both extremes. I think God has saved you and his grace has saved you. And because of his grace, you're covered. You're covered. If you die tonight, you can have some confidence that you're going to stand with him. But part of believing is trusting. Julie and I a couple of years ago went to Niagara Falls, and it was one of our anniversary, but we didn't go on our anniversary. Our anniversary is in August, but we went a couple months after for one reason or another, and we went to. So it's October, and it was already getting a little cold in Niagara Falls, and they had a museum there. You start running out of things. You saw the falls, and we did some different things. There's a museum there. We did that, and it had a wall dedicated to the great Blondin. And Charles Blondin was a tightrope walker, and at the turn of last century, he had a rope across Niagara Falls, and he walked across it, and he got really good at it, and did it several times. And it wasn't it was a tightrope, but it wasn't tight. I mean, he had to walk down about 20 feet to the middle of it, then up on the other side. It had a real curve in it, and he walked across it blindfolded. He did that a couple times. He walked across it on stilts, which just seems nutty to me. That just seems crazy to me. But stilts, that seemed like the worst. He walked across it and cooked an omelet in the middle and ate the omelet and then came across. And which I don't know how that was done, but he did that. So carried the stuff over to cook it, cooked the omelet, and carried it off. And he had a wheelbarrow, and he pushed the wheelbarrow with stuff in the wheelbarrow. Had a chair in the wheelbarrow, and then he would stand on the chair on the tightrope and go back and forth. And he comes across with the wheelbarrow, and he says, how many of you believe I could put a man in here and we could go across? And the crowd, yeah, go Blondin, you could do it. And he goes, well, then one of you hop in and let's go. And of course, it's a whole different animal then, right? I'm like that with airplanes. I believe if you were to give me a lie detector, I believe the plane will take off. I believe the plane will land safely. I really do believe that. I mean, in my head, I believe it. But there's something about getting in the airplane once we start bouncing around up there, and then I don't know if I believe it or not, right? Because belief and trust go hand in hand. Now, I believe in it enough that I trust it to get me there, even though it kind of creeps me out a little bit. And maybe if I really believed that Blondin could go across that tightrope, I'd hop in the wheelbarrow. But part of belief is being willing to put your money where your mouth is. Part of belief is saying, okay, I'm in. And I think all you've got to do to be saved is believe in Jesus. But part of belief is following him. And it's that verse. Whoever claims to live in him must live like Jesus lived. Some experts are predicting that once this COVID thing is over, and who knows how long that'll be, but once the COVID thing is over, as many as 20% of the people who were coming to church probably won't come. Now, there may be some new people who come, and that's awesome, but there's 20% of the ones who used to come aren't going to come anymore. And there's all sorts of reasons for that. I mean, it may be a year before we can all get back together without fear, or 2 years. I don't know. In 2 years, people move, people die. 2 years is a long time. So there'll be some of that. If a person was only coming 1 or 2 times a month before, they may not miss it that much. And there's going to be some people who, for one reason or another, were frustrated with the church they attended, were ticked off about some things, and then they're not going to come back. Once they've been away from it, they'll want to do something different. And it's been a hard deal for preachers. There's been a lot of preachers who are worried about it. Online, I'll read different articles written by preachers or church leaders, and there's some preachers it's a real fear. What are we going to do when that happens? And so far, I've not worried too much about that. It's not that I don't think about it. I know it's a possibility, but I don't worry that much about it. And it partly is from a book, a Kyle Idleman book I read a couple of years ago, where he talks about a story that Jesus feeds the 5,000, and it's a pretty big miracle. As miracles go in the Bible, and Jesus miracles, it's a pretty big miracle because there's a lot of witnesses to it, right? Some things you could say, well, he did that, but only 1 or 2 guys saw it, so maybe he didn't really do it. But 5,000 people see it, right? Everybody knows. Everybody knows exactly what's going on. There's a lot of witnesses to it. It's mentioned that miracle in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. 4 different Gospels talk about it. Apart from the resurrection, it's one of the biggest miracles that Jesus ever did, and it really makes an impact on that crowd. But Jesus, for whatever reason, after he feeds the 5,000, everybody kind of camps out there for the night. He kind of slips off. And the Gospels mention that he doesn't make a big deal about leaving. He just kind of escapes. He doesn't let everybody know where he's going. And the next morning when they all get up, hoping to have free breakfast, he's not there. So they go look for him. And by the time they find him, it's probably close to lunch, and they're all hungry. And so they start pushing him. Why don't you do something like you did yesterday, make us food again? And he tells me, won't. He says, that's not why I came. And he even says some things like, I'm the bread of life. I didn't come to feed you bread. I came to be the bread. You need to be with me to get to heaven. And it frustrates people for 2 things. First of all, they think he's kind of bragging about himself too much. But then it also, well, where's the free food? And it ticks him off that he's not doing this. And so it says a lot of people left him. A lot of the crowd said, well, forget it then. If you're not going to feed us, then, go, do your thing, and we'll go do ours. And they left him. And it says that Jesus let them go. He doesn't run after them and beg them to stay. It's always been a volunteer kind of thing, and not everybody's going to want to do it. And it's possible that when this COVID thing is over, that there will be a lot of people who say, I don't know if that's what I want to do anymore. And I think Jesus will let them go. Some of the people, again, from Kyle Idleman, that book, they were fans of Jesus. They weren't really followers. They thought it was cool what Jesus did, but it didn't change them. And I've been thinking about my own life on that some. Is that what I am? Am I just a fan? Is it something that is there some part of this that I need to do better? Because I think it can sneak up on you. And the COVID thing, this whole deal it's just a weight, and it made me open my eyes a little bit and think about, okay, well, is that what I've been doing? I've got a friend who's a football fan, and he likes the Cowboys. And I've known him for years and years and years and years. And it's not Josh who liked the Cowboys. It's not him, so I will mention that. But I've known him longer than Josh. But he's one of those guys who, when his team wins or loses, his pronouns are weird. He'll say, "Boy, we've got a tough game this week." Now my friend doesn't play, right? He's not on the field. He won't put on pads. In fact, he'll mostly be drinking sodas or beer and eating chips during the game. There'll be very little physical exertion for him watching the game. And if his team loses 3 or 4 years, have some bad years, he gets real quiet. And if you push him or needle him, you can get him mad, and we've had a hard year or two. But then if they're winning, he's insufferable. We're going to kill you guys this week. Well, you're not going to do anything this week. You're going to be in your lazy boy watching the game. But it's all, I'm in there, I'm a fan. But he's not really doing anything. It's all pretend, right? And it's made me think about my church stuff. I mean, how do I know if I really believe this or not? Is it just something we do when we're all big and together, or is it something that I really, really care about? Because Jesus, he never lowers the standards. He always keeps the standards pretty high. If you're going to follow me, this is what's required. If you're going to follow me, this is what it means. Anybody who claims to live in Jesus has got to live like Jesus did. So how are we doing? Well, Jesus has some expectations of you. And I was going to list a couple of them. Almost all Bible teaching churches, I really can't think of an exception to this. Almost all Bible teaching churches will say one of the things you've got to do as a Christian is you've got to know the Lord. And that means you can feed yourself. It means you do the work of learning how to pray. It means you do the work of learning how to read your Bible and try to understand it. It means you're growing, and you take responsibility. One thing that as a preacher I've heard through the years more than one time is somebody come to me and say, I'm going to go to another church. I'm just not getting fed here. And I want to say there's a lot of good reasons to leave Mount Pleasant. Let me just mention that ahead of time, okay? There are a lot of good reasons to leave any church. There's a lot of good reasons to do that. But I'm not getting fed. That's all on you. That's always all on you. That's always all on you. Part of being a Christian is I want to know the Lord. I want to know the Lord even if I'm surrounded by morons, right? I want to know the Lord even if no one else cares about it but me. I want to know the Lord. I want to know him. And again, think about that race to Bedford. One of the things that gets you when you're going back to the gym is that you look at somebody else who's in much better shape than you and you get discouraged. Don't focus that way. You may know somebody who can pray for hours and it doesn't bother them at all, and you can't do that at all. 2 minutes and your mind's wandering. So just start where you're at, but be consistent about it. Set your alarm on your phone if you have to. Make a plan to get up in the morning. Do whatever it is, but just start praying. And just start seeking the Lord. Every Bible teaching church will tell you this is one of the keys to being a Christian. Paul says, I consider everything else garbage except for the privilege of knowing Jesus. You got to love, and that means you're building deep relationships with other believers. One of the biggest indicators, Andy Stanley at North Point did a study a couple of years ago. They found that one of the biggest indicators of whether somebody could survive a crisis of faith is if they had good Christian friends. If they were all by themselves, it was easy to wander off the reservation. But if they had some good Christian friends, it seemed like they could handle so much more. And I've seen this in my own life. And again, there's just no Bible teaching church that will say anything other than that. You've got to love deeply. There was a guy in our church this week that I found out about was having a hard time. And when I heard about the hard time he was having, I said, oh man, that's awful. I need to go talk to him, see what's going on. And I called, hey, how you doing? What's happening? I heard you're having a hard time. And we talked about it for a little bit. And I said, well, do you need anything? And he told me, and he mentioned a few other people here at the church. These people already called. And they're already checking on me, and because he had done the work of being involved in some small groups. He had done the work of being involved in some ministries here. He had made some contacts. And so when everything kind of fell apart, he had connections. And that's part of being a Christian. And it's Jesus' expectation for you. He wants you to serve. That means you learn to leverage your gifts and your talents and your resources, all the different privileges that God's given you. You learn to leverage those things for other people to build his kingdom up. That might be a money thing. It might be about giving, but it's not just about giving. It's about your time. It's about your talent, your reputation. You leverage those things that God has blessed you with to increase his kingdom. And again, every Bible teaching church would talk about that. And then you share your faith. You speak up. You let other people know what it's about. And Jesus, in many different verses, talks about how important all of these things are. It's just basic Christianity. If we're going to tear the church down to the studs, this is like the main things that as Christians, everybody should be about. And you should be about it. And Jesus won't lower his expectations on that. Now, sometimes a church might be tempted to to soft serve some of that stuff and not talk about it being that big a deal. But Jesus doesn't ever do that. This stuff matters. This is important. If you want to follow me, if you're going to claim to walk in Jesus, then you got to walk like I walked, and this is what I do, and this is what you got to do. Now, I miss getting together in big church. We were having 450 people coming every week when we were rolling before March. I miss it. That was a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to do a song when it's just packed in here. It is a lot of fun. It's enjoyable. It's enjoyable to be in the crowd when that happens. It's enjoyable to be on the stage when that happens. It's fun. You know, it's fun to see the crowd. So I miss it, right? But the problem with the crowd is that sometimes it can tempt you to think you could check these boxes when you didn't really do anything. I mean, like you're called to share your faith, right? And so one Sunday you see, man, there's all these new people at church. I don't know who they are. Or maybe somebody came forward at the end and was baptized. Or maybe somebody's joining the church, or you hear that this. And so you think, man, our church is growing. And in your head, you mentally check that box, like you're part of a team that's sharing your faith. But you've never shared your faith. You never said a word to anybody about what you believe. Or maybe, being able to feed yourself. You say, well, are you praying? Well, yeah, I prayed this morning at church. Well, you didn't really pray. The guy in front said, hey, I'm going to pray with you. And you were quiet, but your head was on 100 different things. You never thought about that at all. Or you say, well, I did it. I went to the sermon. I heard the sermon, but you just kind of put up with that. You didn't really think about it. You didn't really apply any of it. And you didn't, it allows you to check your box in like the easiest way possible. And again, I miss it. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but you can fool yourself. You're building deep relationships with other believers. Well, yeah, I was with 400 Christians this morning. Well, kind of. You said, how are you doing to 20 people, but you don't know them and they don't know you. And in fact, if you're not building those relationships, sometimes a church full of people can be the loneliest place in the world. Because you're carrying all this junk and your family's a mess or your marriage is having trouble and everybody else looks like they got it all together and you're lonelier when you were there than you were before and because there's no relationship. There's no connection. And I miss the other thing. I think when church is going well, when God's people are committing to do the things that God wants them to do, man, church becomes a celebration of all that. And it really inspires you and encourages you and picks you up. If you're already doing the work to kind of feed yourself, when you come here, man, it's like, I can really shout about this thing. Or when you've done the work of inviting friends and talking to friends about the Lord, this can be the culmination of a lot of effort on your part. But it can also be a way to camouflage some real weaknesses in your faith. And I've seen it with me. I've seen it with me in my own life. When we weren't able to get together and do things here, well, how much am I leveraging what I've been given for God? If I can't be here and do what we do here with all those people, well, how much am I sharing my faith? I'm preaching a sermon, but but how much am I talking to individual people about this stuff? How much am I? And so it's made me think about it too. It's made me really think for my own life. I'm not telling you what to do. I mean, you may be in a different place, but for me, it was troubling a little bit, and I had to think hard about it. I was talking to a guy this week, and he said, there's two different kinds of discipline. There's external discipline, and there's self-discipline. And self-discipline's better, he said. External discipline is when the boss tells you to do it. And the boss can be anybody. The boss can be your foreman at work. It can be your husband or wife. It can be a parent. It can be a loud neighbor. Your mother may still be a boss in your life. I don't know. The policeman may be a boss for you for a moment. You know how fast you were going, Mr. Huddleston? Yes. Yeah. No, I don't know, officer. I thought 5 under the speed limit, but if you say so. That can all be a boss, right? That can all be a boss. And that external pressure can sometimes work on you so hard that you'll do what you have to do because you don't want to disappoint. One external pressure for me is the sermon. I've got to get up here every Sunday and say something to people. And it needs to sort of be coherent and have a point and flow through. And if I don't do that, people are going to notice. And probably people are going to talk about it. Hop in the car after the service. Wow, that was a long 30 minutes, was it? And we used to do a Bible study on Wednesday night when we were able to meet. And 1 week when we were doing the study, I didn't have time to prep. I mean, I planned to prep that day on Wednesday, which I shouldn't have done, and Wednesday it's got away from me. There were so many different things and I couldn't get to it. And so when I showed up Wednesday night, I walked in, and the first thing I said is, I really didn't have time to work on this today, so I'm going to read it with you, and we're going to go through it together, but I'm sorry, we'll just get through it together. And so we did it together, and the next week, one of the older ladies who hadn't been there the week before when I struggled, she was there that week. And I said, oh, hey, boy, it's good to see you. Missed you last week. And she said, well, I heard I didn't miss anything. And that's a true story. I didn't make that up. I'm not exaggerating that. That's exactly what happened. And she has passed on now, and I'm sure she feels worse about this now that she's passed on. I'm sure when she thinks about it, she regrets it, but it's too late. It really happened. That's external pressure, right? That's knowing that I'm going to have to stand there and take the test, and I know that's coming, so because I know it's coming, I prep for it. Fear makes me prep for it, right? Responsibility makes me prep for it. But self-discipline is what you do when no one's necessarily going to check in on you, when no one's going to know, And it can be about 1,000 things. Whether you eat that second slice of pie or not, people may not notice. Can you say no to things that will taste good but are not going to take you where you want to go? Do you have any self-discipline? The self-discipline's always harder, and it's hard on these things. Like I said, to feed myself means that I may have to get up early in the morning and read my Bible. If I'm not really a good student of the Bible, it means I may have to get some help. Either books to help me get through it or to talk to some people and just admit my weakness, and none of us like to do that. If I'm going to build deep relationships with other believers, it means I'm going to have to intentionally join some things that I might not want to join or start some things that I might not want to start. Leveraging your gifts and resources is always going to mean that I have less. Even if you're rich as can be, it's going to mean you have less. And for some of us, having less is just super painful. Feels like we're taking such a gigantic risk when we have less, and we start comparing ourselves to other people, and it's not fair that I'm doing so much when this other person's not doing enough, and we talk ourselves out of it. And I know that sharing your faith is hard. The other people might smirk at you. They might not want to talk about it. They might not want to be your friend anymore if you share these things. And because of all that, and because you know that you won't get graded on it, it's tempting to slide. I will not smoke a cigarette in the foyer after the service. I won't do it even if someone offers me one. Hey, cigarette? No, I'll say, not interested. And it's not necessarily because I would or would not want to smoke. I just know that if I smoked in the foyer afterward, that's probably the end of my employment here, right? I probably won't be allowed to come back the next week if I smoke a cigarette. Now, if we were to grade on a piece of paper sins, all the sins you can think of, and we start with murder and just work our way down, I'm guessing cigarette smoking is way down here somewhere, right? But I know that if I were to do that in the foyer, that's probably it for me. But on the other hand, I know that if I get really short and angry with Julia, most of you won't see that. I know that if I look at something I shouldn't look at, most of you won't know about that. I know that if I hold onto my money tighter than normal, you're probably not going to see me either way on that. I know that if I don't pray this week, if I just don't pray at all this week, you're going to not see that. And so because I know you're not going to see it, I might be tempted to slide. And if we were grading things, again, murder's way up here at the beginning, we work all the way down to jaywalking at the very bottom, and we come from murder all the way down to that. If cigarette smoking is here, I'm guessing not praying is worse, but no one's going to see it. If I don't build these deep relationships with other believers, right? I just keep everything surface and casual, you're not going to see it, and it's one of the big things. So I want to start getting better at this, and I want to challenge as many of you to get better at it as you can. That's going to be the next 2 weeks. We've got to become, if we're going to have to be leaner as a church, and we may have to after all this is over, then let's be better. Now, the good news about all that is that better is contagious. Whenever anybody makes a commitment to walk like Jesus, it's contagious. Other people see it, and they are inspired by it. They are. I think our world is hungry to see a Christ-like example. I think most of the people that you know don't have many friends. I think we're a lonely culture. I think most people will spend whole evenings in television and video games and just kill time. I think we invest in stupid things just to kill time. I think a lot of people don't think there's any hope or help, and they don't know why they're here. And I think a Jesus message today is contagious. I think it would spread. And I think a person who really is fired up and living for Jesus in a way that he asks us to, I think that's contagious. I read in a book this week about the power of talking about yawning. That if I talk about yawning, it's hard for you not to yawn. Some of you can hear me talk about yawning all the time. I want to yawn. If I were to yawn, it'd be really hard for you not to yawn. And if you were to start yawning, it's hard to quit. Once you yawn that first time, it's hard to quit yawning. It's like you want to yawn again. It's like, I don't know, and I'm kind of feeling tired all of a sudden. And it's just me talking about it, right? I haven't done anything but talk about just yawning. You know, it'd feel good to get a little extra air, a little extra oxygen. Just take a deep breath, and it's hard. We're a lot more susceptible to influence than we like to pretend that we are as people. And I think the world is hungry for people who will make a decision to put Christ first. I think you'd be contagious. So my prayer for you at the end of the service is that you commit to do that. That you commit to be a people who will learn to feed yourself, learn to build deep relationships, learn to leverage those gifts and talents and strengths that you have, and speak up about your faith. And if you need help with any of it, I'll help you. I'll do it. If I can be any sort of encouragement to you, I want to do that too. And if you want to, after the service, talk and pray about that, I'm available. And let me pray for you now, and then Ross is going to get up and lead us through communion. Dear Lord,